Tailwinds and Headwinds. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast of The Ordinary Maverick. This is Ajay, your host, an ordinary maverick, sharing real life thoughts and experiences and maverick tips. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do so, and you will not miss another episode. We have completed a quarter of the year. The speed of passage of time never ceases to amaze me. Time propels forward regardless of any factor, right? But many times one does need to push to move forward, right? If you travel as much as I do, I'm sure you have wondered sometimes on the duration of your flight. Even on round trips, there is a difference in flight timing each way. For example, it will be like 6 hours one way, and then the other way it will be 5 hours 20 minutes or something. And if you're a curious maverick like I am, you will wonder why this is so. You're going and coming from the same place, so why the difference in time? Why is it shorter one way? I experienced this recently on my trip to London. There was a 45-minute difference while coming back. Flight timing was a bit longer. And it got me thinking and reflecting, and here's my take on something that's known as tailwind. A strong tailwind is defined as a force of influence that advances progress towards an improved condition. In the case of planes and flying, a tailwind is a wind that is blowing from behind an aeroplane, boat, or other vehicle, making it move faster. A tailwind can cut the flying time by almost half an hour. Flying in tailwind conditions increases the ground speed and reduces the air speed of an aircraft. So, what's a headwind? Headwind is wind blowing towards the aircraft. It increases the lift, so pilots prefer to land and take off in headwind. Gives such a nice push and makes for smooth touchdowns and liftoffs. While doing this with a tailwind, as it blows from behind the aircraft can make it more challenging and bumpy too. So it's better to have tailwinds in flight as it'll help aircraft go faster, saving both time and fuel. Another way to think about it is, imagine there are two planes flying across and in the opposite direction. One will have a headwind and one will have a tailwind. Even though the distance to travel is the same for them both, the plane with the tailwind will get there faster because they have the benefit of an unseen force supporting them. And this is not just for flying. For example, it could also be applied to other settings, like if the general housing market gets better, then it's providing tailwinds for home improvement business. The more houses that are sold or rented out, the more people are going in for doing home improvements, and the more that sector also benefits. See how the tailwind force works. There's another kind of wind, crosswind, which is wind blowing from the side of the aircraft. Big changes in crosswinds during landing can cause problems and even making the aircraft deviate from the runway centerline. But let's go back to the tailwinds and headwinds. Interesting to note that a headwind for one sector can be a tailwind for another and vice versa. Let's keep the example of the airline industry. If the fuel prices fall, it's great. It's tailwinds for the airline industry as jet fuel is the biggest expense and the profit margins go up dramatically. But it's not a tailwind for the oil sector. In fact, it's a headwind. As oil prices drop, the stocks of oil companies start falling, and that negatively impacts the oil company and all other related sectors. It may even affect employment in this industry as revenue decreases and cutbacks happen. See how these sectors get impacted differently from a related phenomena, and tailwinds and headwinds get interchangeable. Many factors are at play here: political climate, regulations, stock market, and sometimes can also be natural disasters. Example, the recent COVID-19 pandemic. It was a headwind for the entire world, with the global shutdown, businesses closing and stock markets crashing, unemployment rising. And here is the big but. It was a tailwind for some sectors, example, digital technology. I mean, recall how everyone suddenly started using Zoom and the likes of it. The internet use was at its peak. Alternative careers came into being, a tailwind of sorts for many with regards to their personal lives and a chance to reconnect with nature and themselves plus close family. Made me start thinking of how we should pay attention to the headwinds and tailwinds in our own lives. Just as a pilot, a flight engineer, and a flight navigator would understand the wind directions and the headwind and tailwind as they prepare to take off to their destinations, and then, take these factors into account for their flight plan, building in the precautions and ensuring they reach their final destinations safely. We too should be doing the same in our lives. Recall when you fly, the pilot will often announce that there may be turbulence and to be prepared, fasten seat belts, etc., or will alert to say there may be some bumps along the way. Bit of a choppy flight. Very important, come to think of it, as she or he is preparing us for the journey and is doing that after understanding the wind factor, the headwind and the tailwinds. Reflecting on my own life, there were times when the headwinds came in full force and everything seemed difficult and an uphill struggle. Even with a strong headwind, I now know with experience and reflection that just as a strong headwind can be difficult for one sector but become a tailwind and great for another, it was the same in my life. Each time I got a no for a job that I wanted, bad headwinds that kept pulling me down, making me take more time to get where I wanted to be. It was a tailwind for me to look elsewhere, keep pushing, find other opportunities, meet more people, widen my network, so to speak. So yes, headwinds on the one hand in getting a job, but there are tailwinds for building my network and getting better and better at the interviews, applications, right? More importantly, it is to analyze situations in your life and see if they will be tailwinds or headwinds and plan accordingly, just like a pilot does for the flight plan. You might have heard the famous saying, "You are the pilot of your life's journey." So true when one looks at what we are speaking about, right? Recently, I've come across many friends and people in the extended network that are challenged by the economic situation, more so across the younger folk. Thanks to my young daughters, we get a chance to interact and learn quite a bit about what's happening in their world. And the headwind for retaining your job is strong. It's a time of uncertainty impacted by many factors, most of which are out of your control. So, here is where the flight plan idea comes in play. Plan for the headwind ahead. Turn it into a tailwind for propelling you fast in a direction that you have planned for. The more you do that, the more in charge you will feel and the more the confidence and positive energy. And nothing like positive energy to make you stronger and attract even more tailwinds to spur you on. But it's easier said than done. Requires grit, courage, perseverance, determination, and a never can die attitude. I've seen some remarkable headwind turned tailwinds recently in our circle. People that got laid off had a time bound days to find a new job, and they did. Also, seen how repeated headwinds have provided opportunities that were not on the radar and changed the life around for the better, thus becoming tailwinds. For me personally, COVID 19 was a headwind professionally. Like many others, I too experienced the drop in my work opportunities, and it was tough. Well, I built on the tailwinds, and one of the things coming out was this podcast series itself. Fellow Mavericks, Create the flight plan for your life and account for the headwinds and tailwinds. Just like a good pilot, you too will safely fly and reach your destination. Do keep writing your comments and sharing your feedback via our Instagram at The Ordinary Maverick or through our hashtag The Ordinary Maverick. I love hearing from you. This is Ajay signing off and wishing you have an amazing day, a super amazing year. Keep well, stay safe. Credits. This podcast series was put together as a team effort from the Bharadwaj family. Concept, design, title, researchers and reviewers Ajay, Sanjana, Avantika and Niharika Bharadwaj. Script, Sanjana. Cover design, Niharika. All rights reserved.